We're very excited to see so many of you joining us today to engage in this increasingly relevant and pressing topic for Canadian businesses. Before we begin today's presentation, I want to thank our principal sponsors, Accenture, RBC, Richard Ivey Business School, Rogers, and the Globe and Mail for their valuable contributions to make this webinar possible. I also want to thank the Ontario Chamber of Commerce for its generous funding and support by way of its Global Experience at Work initiative. We're looking forward to generating an honest and solutions-based discussion on best practices for employee retention in diverse workplaces. Just as a reminder, and for those of you using the WebEx service for the first time, please use the Q&A and chat panels on the right-hand side of your screen if you have a question or require any technical assistance. You can enter your inquiry at any time during the webinar, and we will put your questions in the queue and field them to our panelists in the last 15 minutes of the webinar. Now, let me introduce you to our panelists. We're pleased to welcome Grace Baba, who is the General Manager at i3 International. i3 International is one of the most flexible and innovative companies in the security industry and a leader in digital video technology. In 2006, i3 International was also a recipient of the Toronto Region Immigrant Employment Council's Immigrant Success Award, which recognizes organizations for their leadership and innovation in recruiting and retaining skilled immigrants in the Toronto region. Grace started with the founding company JK Quality in 1996 and was one of the founding partners of i3 International in 2001, managing staff growth from 2 full-time employees to 52 in Canada and over 60 worldwide. That's impressive, Grace. Our next panelist is Dave Lovelock, the Manager of Employment Engagement at Skills for Change. Dave is a client-focused professional with extensive experience in corporate recruitment and retention. In addition, he brings over 10 years of diversity experience at Skills for Change and is a volunteer mentor. At Skills for Change, his focus includes corporate sponsors, foundation donors, employer-sponsored volunteers, diversity services, and employers who are interested in Skills for Change job candidates. Welcome, Dave. Welcome, Grace.
Happy to be here.
Now, let's move on to the agenda. As you can see on your screen, you will hear first from Grace, who will share with you the family corporate culture at i3 International. She will speak specifically about what it is, why it's valued at her company, and how these values have positively contributed to i3's growing success and workforce. Dave is then going to speak about the approach taken by Skills for Change when it comes to helping employers build harmony in a diverse workplace. In addition, Dave will also showcase workplace training and communications practices that help businesses boost cohesive team building, inclusiveness, and workplace productivity. And last but not least, we're going to open it up for your questions. With that, I'd like to welcome Grace to open our session today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for inviting myself and i3 to be part of this webinar. Hi, everybody. My name is Grace Baba. As Jacqueline mentioned, I'm one of the owners of i3 International, and I'm also the general manager of this company. So we're a family-run business that was founded by my brother-in-law 25 years ago. And the other owners are 3 brothers, the youngest of which is my husband. So it is a very integrated family company. i3 International was awarded with the IS award for being able to recruit and retain skilled immigrants in our small, mid-sized business. When we first applied and won this award, many people asked us, what are the keys to finding success in achieving diversity and retention? And at first, I didn't really have an answer to them, aside from the fact that we viewed all experience in education, whether it was Canadian or outside of Canada, as being valid. But I put a little bit more thought into it, and I really think that the organization's culture really helped us embody this ability to recruit and retain our diverse workforce. And you can see in our mission statement on the screen that we actually use the word family culture in it purposely, so because we really believe that is an important part of our business. So since my business is pretty small, it's a small, medium and business enterprise, it's really hard for you to see what our business is all about. So I'm just going to play a little video clip of what our business is about and a little bit about what our culture entails.
I think started about 25 years ago. We started off as being immigrants, and we started from a very remote city. The idea was to really conceptualize what this is. We thought that if we can actually build a company that can have a product that was integrated on multiple platforms, a product that is intelligent in the way it's designed, in the way that it captures video, in the way that it mines that video data, and a product that constantly strives to innovate. That's the reality. Bring together a great company. And I'm happy to say today, it is that fruition of that idea that is now I3 International. The I3 Family culture is very important to Business 101. Among the key part of it is there's not founded our organization that is related to the same family principles values. I value that family partnership more so than I value shareholder value or their company. I certainly see our relationship growing forward because that area is important. One business is family. And I think practice brings a family culture such a unique. But if you and Doc bring in somebody in the family and treat them like family, they will then in turn give you the best performance. And that in turn will reflect onto our customers.
You can see from that video that the word family culture is being repeated several times, both from the Executive VP of Sales and as well from our customers. So when we mention family in this date and time, it can mean a host of different things. It could mean single parent families, blended families, extended families, same-sex families. And when I3 incorporates the family culture, it essentially means what we want our staff to feel at home. We want our staff to feel like they're at home away from home, like with all families. But we're by far not perfect. So we want to be able to acknowledge our differences, work through our problems, and then come up with a solution that meets all of our needs. At the end of the day, the principle that some of us spend more face time with our colleagues than some of our own families really leads us to our corporate desire to leverage a family-like atmosphere to make our workplace somewhere we can really pull together to produce something really special. We may be able to work together, but we also encourage staff to play together. And I think this is one of the key pieces to the success of integration of our staff in our company. So one of the challenges of any human resources professional is to recruiting your organization based on the demographics of the city. So if you really are following the fair practices of recruitment, then your demographics should look like this one a little on the slide. And this is found on the toronto.ca website. And it shows basically what the demographic of Toronto looks like. And it's really interesting to know at the very bottom, the multiple response indicates that 30% of respondents says that their ethnocentricity included more than one ethnicity. So that's a really good depiction of the melting pot, as Toronto is described as. I think it's fabulous. So we're not even a city where you can just meet different diversities, but they also marry one another as well. So how does your organization stack up against these demographics presented in Toronto? I'm happy to say, well, our company is doing pretty well. To give you a deeper understanding of the diversity at I3, we have 7 offices out of 7 countries, headquartered in Toronto. We have 52 full-time staff members, and of the 52 staff members, we have over 22 representative languages. And you can see from this list that we do recruit from a diverse population, not just centering around a specific cultural background. From a skilled immigrant perspective, approximately 24% of our staff are educated beyond high school outside of Canada, and many of these staff members, I3 was their first employer. And the equal amount, I would say even higher than 24%, still were immigrants who came to Canada as either young children or young adults and proceeded to do some post-secondary education here and proceeded into the workforce from there. So, being a part of a family is something that everyone can relate to no matter where they see coming from in this world. And the principles of a successful family can be seen in any family in the world, including a corporate family. So at I3, we apply the same principles to make a family successful into our corporate culture as well. To break down some of these principles, they include inclusion, sharing, learning, playing, and communication. So I'll go into a little bit detail. For inclusion, well, first, I will point out that being a visible minority myself, growing up in a Caucasian community, I can tell you firsthand that the best way to create a welcome environment in any place, whether it be a school, a place of work, it all centers around inclusion. So if you include people, it'll ease tension and prevent racial and ethnic division. The best way that our company includes people is to eat together. So we find that it breaks down barriers. There's a lot of similarities across ethnicities when it comes to food, which our staff can relate to. And the differences are the things that they can enjoy and relish in. So we have potluck lunches, events, which lead to recipe sharing, and sometimes even when we're ordering lunch, they have requests of certain ethnic dishes to order in for our potluck lunches. So even if it's not a potluck or a pizza lunch or a barbecue day, spending time to eat with each other as a company during our welcome parties is a great way to build a relationship and to enjoy each other's company. At I3, we actually disbanded the farewell parties many years ago. We adopted what we call the welcome party, which is a lunch event where the entire staff comes together and we eat. And then we welcome our newest staff member to our staff. During the time, we do a casual, it's like an off-the-cuff interview. It's described as a roast, but it's not that bad. And we ask things like, are you a good cook? Do you play any kind of sports? Any kind of it's usually non-professional related questions, but it just serves to break the ice. It allows us to know a little bit more about the staff member. It's funny to see that usually the previously celebrated staff members often contribute to the questions for the next onboarding staff member. So it's really good to see that once, I've been a part of it, so now I can contribute. That kind of inclusion is working really well for our company. During our earlier years as a company, we were always very vocal in our encouragement to our staff to speak English, since this is the language of our business, particularly in the lunchroom, so that if they're lunching together, we can contribute to the conversation rather than developing cliques and groups. And then, so since the majority of our staff members are either immigrants or children of immigrants, there's a lot of patience amongst them, and they encourage people to speak and to express themselves. So the next thing that is sharing, the next point. And sharing comes hand in hand with inclusion. By including different people of different ethnicities and cultures into the workplace, we share ideas and knowledge from a different perspective. We've found that sharing stories with one another is a great way to break the ice and to gain better clarity on a particular subject or issue. If we work with specific examples from their past, we can learn what had worked and what didn't, and then apply these ideas into a problem or issue. Staff members know that we all have a common goal for the company. so that the achievement of this will only help them to support their own families at home. So we also, again, share not only ideas and stories, we have case studies, what worked, what didn't work, and then we share recipes as well. Okay, so the next point is sharing knowledge and learning. In 2006, when the majority of our R&D staff were new immigrants, we did host ESL classes on site for our skilled immigrants. Currently, since the staff has been with us for quite some time, we don't have any need for ESL classes, but we do have a resource that we can lean on any time. And consequently, it's actually one of our staff members is a trained teacher in ESL. So he's taught ESL overseas, and he's somebody we can leverage at any time since he's on staff. And if there is somebody who's going for an English test or a speech test for part of their work permit or PR residency requirements, then we just book some sessions with them, and then we're off and running. Training is one of the corporate objectives that has been set by our CEO, and as a result of this, the company members are mandated to attend training sessions on a monthly basis. The majority of our training is in-house and taught by our staff members themselves. Training sessions can range from health and safety, public speaking tips, to technology-related information. Staff meetings are also conducted with different staff members being encouraged to speak a few slides regarding the projects they are working on. So there's a lot of training, a lot of public speaking. We encourage a lot of speaking internally within their groups across departments, but just even practicing the ability to speak to one another. All new staff members are booked for cross-departmental training during their onboarding process, which pairs them up with different people in different departments. And no one is exempt from learning or teaching new staff members. So this allows for current staff members to exercise their speaking and teaching skills while the new staff members meet and get to know their colleagues. And during each day of onboarding, the new staff members are taken out for lunch by the department member that does the training. So they get to share lunch, again, eating together every day with a different member of the team. So that's another way for them also to integrate into the staff force and eat together and learn about each other outside of work as well. So we don't just eat, we also play together. So we've heard the common phrase that's used, a family that plays together stays together. And at I3 believe that sometimes a 5-minute game of Wii or ping pong during the day can serve to allow the staff a break from their daily rituals and help them to get to know each other. It eliminates the boundaries associated with departments that don't really cross each other, like R&D and finance don't really communicate with one another. So we have a randomly drawn team, so we just put all the staff members' name in a hat and we randomly draw the teams together, and they're paired up completely randomly, and the Wii tournaments are scheduled 5 minutes a day and over maybe a 2 or 3 week tournament play schedule. And usually the final match is booked during a welcome party lunch. So what happens is after we do the welcome for the new staff member, we'll have the final challenge for the Wii or the ping pong tournament, and everybody gets to cheer for whoever their favorite can be. And it's all in good fun. In addition, during every company event, we have games organized to play from Taboo to Sing It, Trivia, Poker, Blackjack. There really isn't a limit to the games we can play as long as they're inclusive and everyone can enjoy either participating or watching. So I really don't think there really isn't anything better than play or eating to eliminate boundaries. Okay, so the last thing is, here's my last thing. Communication. Families are far from perfect. If you have siblings or children of your own, you will likely recall the fights that you've had with your brothers or sisters or children with each other. My ears are still ringing from children shrieking in the backseat of my car as they fight with each other. People clash. It's just a fact of life. There's always differences in personalities, differences in culture that are sometimes difficult to understand or see from an individual's perspective. So at I3, we encourage our staff to vent out frustrations before acting on them. We tell them to talk to each other, seek advice if there's anything that's bothering them, and if an issue is brought up to human resources, our first approach is usually a coaching approach, where we'll listen to the individual. And if there's a misunderstanding related to communication or culture, then this is explained to them from a third-party perspective first. Oftentimes there's new information about a culture that new immigrants were not aware of. I'll give you an example. We had a manager who was from China and a clerk from Barbados who seemed to be constantly in conflict with one another. Manager had a habit of starting every answer with no. It was a complete habit of hers. That if you ask a question, no, was the first answer that she would give. And the clerk took the no, literally meaning no, and failed to listen carefully to the rest of the sentence, even if it wasn't in agreement to her. She was just focusing on the no. And the coaching took quite some time, but they were able to encourage and work it out amongst themselves. The clerk made to understand that no doesn't really mean no in this case. And then also the finance manager to be alert to the fact that she was starting her every sentence with this reaction. So the next point of communication in any family is to air out frustrations, speak and take advice where needed, and try to work it out first. Don't bottle it up. Communicate. So it may sound like I've simplified things a little, but when it really boils down to it, the success of I3 is due to the backbone built upon the family culture. If you take care of your corporate family, then you've strengthened your foundation and you can build upon almost anything on that. Continue to recruit with an open mind, hire based on the demographics of your city, and once you've hired, then include your staff, share with them, learn with them, train them, play with them, and communicate. Thank you for your time. And is your mind open?
Sounds like a fun place to work.
Well, we like to eat and play. But yes, we try.
Great.
Great. Thank you, Grace, very much for your presentation. What most of you may not know is that Grace came in today with a bit of a cold. So we really thank her for, even being here today. So next, let's turn on to Dave to begin his presentation about building harmony in a diverse workplace.
Great. Thanks very much. I totally support food and play. I'm surprised that with the 23 cultures that were represented at Skills for Change, we're not all overweight with all the food that we go back and forth with. The title of our presentation deals with building harmony in a diverse workplace. And I'm just going to say that harmony equals inclusiveness. That's really what we're going to strive for, and give some practical tools about building inclusiveness. Diversity is something that just happens. When people come in from other countries, that's diversity happening. But inclusiveness is something that needs to be built within your organization and also within our communities. So I'll give you a little bit of background about Skills for Change, our vision statement being a Canada where every immigrant succeeds. And we provide learning and training opportunities to immigrants and refugees to access and fully participate in the workplace and wider community. And I have to correct that because now our vision and mission extends to not just newcomers, but all comers. So it's quite a wide variety of people that we serve. We've been around for about 30 years, and our real purpose is to help provide learning and then help match international talent to the workforce needs of employers, and specifically to help employers find ways to build diversity and inclusiveness into the workplace. We serve about 14,000 immigrants a year, and that's the end of my commercial about Skills for Change, so we'll move on. Oh, another commercial. This is a partial list of some of the corporate clients that we serve, and I'm only doing that to represent, there's quite a brand mix of different organizations, from financial institutions to consulting firms and so forth. And most of these major companies already have managers of human resources, directors of diversity and inclusiveness or diversity advisory councils. But for some of you out there that may be small to medium-sized enterprises, you may not have the capacity to have those resources in-house, and that's one of the things that we try to do at Skills for Change, to help small to medium-sized enterprises also build the inclusiveness into the workplace and therefore harmony. So we talked about diversity. One more clip. There we go. Diversity, first off, what is diversity? It can be many, many things. What we're going to do, we're looking at a number of different elements of diversity that we serve, but we're going to be only looking at one little slice called cultural diversity, which includes visible minorities and immigrants. And that's where we're really going to just focus on today. So how can we help that diversity feel included and respected and understood within the workplace to help develop productivity? And as I've mentioned before, the diversity in our country is immense, especially in Toronto. I mean, we have about 260,000 newcomers coming into Canada every year. About 50% of them decide to stay in Ontario. And of those who stay in Ontario, about 3/4 of them stay in the GTA and make that their home. So there's a lot of different individuals of diverse backgrounds. And what we're trying to do is to help companies find a way to include them into the workplace and increase productivity, but also a bit of happiness, too. That also comes with harmony. This next slide, I'm not going to spend much time on. We could spend a whole day on this slide, but Dr. Milton Bennett, who has developed a model of intercultural sensitivity, has a range of different levels through which most organizations run, from the very far left, which is denial, to defense, minimization, acceptance, adaptation, and integration. So denial, as you may not be able to read in that little box, is at that point, people aren't even aware that there are culturally different ways of thinking or behaving. To the very far right, which is integration, being they incorporate other cultural views into their own and into their workplace. So really, the reason why we're illustrating this continuum is you need to really take a look at where you fall in that continuum. Because there are tools to help you develop, depending on where you start, to where you want to go. And your level of integration really depends upon your customer base, the employees that you have, and your stakeholders, and how much you need to be able to work with them to develop and deliver your products and services. So in a diverse workplace, it's really about satisfying needs. We have two people, or two groups of individuals that need to be satisfied. I'll start with the employers. Employers are looking to find individuals who are professional by screening them, hiring them, and retaining them. These individuals need to have good workplace communication skills. They need to be able to fit into the corporate culture, and we often hear that word fit, where it's such an important thing not just to have the workplace skills and the workplace communication skills, but also the right corporate fit for the organization. Having knowledge of the field in Canada is critical for employers to find in their employees. And, of course, one of their needs they need to satisfy to their stakeholders and their shareholders is to increase productivity and profit. We have a workforce challenge that's coming up. You've heard many times over that there's a growing shortage of skilled labor to meet employers' needs. With retiring baby boomers plus a declining fertility rate, there's a growing demand for global talent. In fact, some baby boomers aren't just retiring, they're called rewiring. They're getting to a point where they're saying, you know what, I don't want to retire, either because they don't want to, or maybe financially it's not the wisest thing for them to do at this point. But they certainly want to keep in the workforce, but decrease their hours and maybe slow the pace of what they were used to in the past. And a key thing that most people do know that deal with internationally trained professionals and have a diverse workforce is by 2013, immigration will count for 100% of the labor force growth in Canada. So that's where our talent's going to be coming from. And it's important to be able to access it and to integrate it into your workplace. From the immigrants' needs, they have a need, first and foremost, to boil this down to the very simplest words, they need to be respected and understood for their strengths. They're looking to find credential recognition. They want to improve their communication skills, both in English communication skills, but also in their workplace communication skills, to understand the nuances of the place where they're working. They're looking for connections to jobs, to build their confidence so they can move forward in their career and their lives. And there's many different reasons why a diverse workforce is important, and it's important to have a strong workforce because of the competitive global environment, bringing diversity of thought and fresh ideas to the workplace. And also, in some cases, when it comes to applying for government tenders, there are certain compliance ratios that must be met to be able to be eligible for those government tenders. So it's really a strong business decision. So in general, helping employers build harmony or inclusiveness into the workplace for us falls into three different areas. First off, we try very hard to help them hire and retain the best talent they can. And I'm not here to try to convince you to hire immigrants. That's a business decision that has to be made by individuals, because you're going to be making decisions as business owners and operators that are in the best interest of your organization, no matter where that person comes from. So hiring and retaining is critical. Training and helping people understand the power of diversity, not only from the standpoint of the management, but also helping the individuals who are newcomers within the organization be better communicators so they can grow within the organization is critical. And thirdly, one of the other things that we're very much involved in is to help organizations of all different levels and sizes become engaged by providing sponsorship opportunities, allowing individuals to consider being mentors. And just as an aside, I've been a mentor. That was my first foray into Skills for Change. 10 years ago, I was a mentor. I didn't even know what a mentor did. And having done that, I moved into a position of board of directors at Skills for Change, and obviously became dangerous enough that they wanted to hire me, and I was delighted to be hired because I really believe in the organization. So we look at ways to help engage newcomers, but also companies in volunteer opportunities. So one of the ways that we are involved in helping workplace inclusiveness in a very practical way is by providing training programs. And I'll just cite a couple of them. Workplace communications, lunch and learn workshops. Many times when we're dealing with organizations, they may have issues where internationally trained folks who they hire may have weaknesses that they need to develop into strengths when it comes to English workplace communication skills. We'll physically go on site to help them and train them in different areas. From the standpoint of helping management understand the need for diversity and cross-cultural training, we'll actually work with them too. So we're working not just, it's a two-way street. It's not just one person, it's both parties that need to be worked with. In the interest of time, I'm just going to flip forward to workplace communications, lunch and learn, and just briefly tell you a little bit about some of the things that the individuals are trained on, that for anyone who's been in Canada for most of their life, as I have been, we take most of these things for granted in terms of how to present information, how to interrupt effectively, how to clarify and confirm information, how to make suggestions or to agree and disagree. There's different nuances of how that's done, and it's important that individuals know how to do that effectively in a Canadian workplace. Just as if I was going to India, I'd need to know how to do that in an Indian workplace. And if I can flip to the next one. Diversity and cross-cultural training programs. Again, this is where we actually go on site to help individuals and management be better effective communicators to better serve their customers. And I can think of one example where we served a healthcare center in downtown Toronto, a rather large one, and their staff that were helping individuals who were the patients were of mixed background, Jamaican, Filipino, Eastern European. And if you think they all communicate the same way, well, the answer is obviously they don't. And it's very important to be able to understand the differences and help bridge those differences so they can communicate effectively to better serve their patients. From the standpoint of engagement, many organizations are beginning, and have for many, many years, align themselves with diversity initiatives, both internally within their own organization, as does Grace's organization and others, and also externally. And one of our key sponsors for an event that we call the New Pioneer Awards is CIBC. They're very, very much immersed in diverse management and very expert at it, and they have been supporting us for, as they say, about 19 or 20 years with our program called New Pioneer Awards. which is one of several events that we have to bring information to the public through which organizations can sponsor and attach themselves to raise their level of brand recognition in the corporate and consumer world and demonstrate their support for a valued, diverse workforce. Most recently, and I love the name Mentorpalooza, and I'm sure most of you are smiling, but back in August we had an event where we had about 200 folks show up, where we took mentors and mentees and a number of different organizations participating to talk about and sharing best practices, which is critical because oftentimes when people take our programs, their level of success in an organization will go up even higher once they're under the wing of a mentor, helping them with the nuances of how to communicate more effectively. Most recently in November, with the help of one of our key sponsors, KPMG, we held a diversity work conference. This was interesting because it was called Culture and Faith in the Workplace. And faith is one of those elephants in the room that nobody really wants to touch, and I'm very proud of the way we handled it. We had about a couple of hundred people there, and sharing information about best practices and answering questions like, okay, you've now built a prayer room. Is that enough? Where do we go from here? What does it mean? What other cultures and faiths do we need to accommodate? Engineering sector conference we have coming up in March, and because we serve different sectors, which includes everything from engineering to doctors and IT professionals, accountants and bookkeepers, each year we have a different conference with a different sector, and this year it'll be engineers. And I mentioned a little bit about New Pioneer Awards, which has been elevated to a different level, called Pioneers for Change, which is happening in June, and that's the showpiece, if you will, of what we do to help highlight the accomplishments of many different people across the past 20 years. So I think maybe in the interest of time, I'm going to flip forward quickly. And of course, my slide changer is looking at me going, what? I'm going to slip past Mentorpalooza. And you have on there, great. Culture and Faith in the Workplace. I'm going to slide by that one too. I want to touch a little bit upon Pioneers for Change. Because Pioneers for Change we're now in our 20th year of providing recognition for accomplishments of newcomers across the world. And it's evolved into a new element called Pioneers for Change, which is being featured at the TIFF Bell Lightbox in June. And we're taking a brand new approach, taking it to a higher level in terms of recognition. And those are the sorts of things that may be of interest to your employees, to your management, to participate in, or just to attend, to see what's happening in the world from the standpoint of diversity and how these individuals and how these organizations are building inclusiveness into the workplace. And I'm going to just, if we can build that whole slide, please. Yeah. Great, thanks. So I just want to sort of wrap it up in terms of some key things that I think are very important, and this is shared with many of my colleagues back at Skills for Change as to what I can do to help build harmony or inclusiveness into the workplace. And I think if we keep it really simple, which is a lot easier to grasp, is to stop. First and foremost, stop stereotyping and oversimplifying. There's different ways to do that, and of course that would take a whole new seminar to get into those details. But also to stop thinking that breakdowns in communication occur just because the other person may be perceived as being on the wrong track. Take a breath, think about the interaction, and consider both sides of the story. Look. This sounds like crossing the street, doesn't it? Stop, look. But it really is supposed to be that simple. Look for opportunities to suspend judgment and see the situation as an outsider from your organization. How do you perceive your organization, and how do you perceive your individual employees, and how they interact from outside your company? Look for new ways to communicate. And there's no one right way to communicate. There's many different ways. And again, much of what we teach involves that too. I'm sure we've all heard or remember our mothers saying, listen, listen, listen. Well, listening is still very, very important when it comes to inclusiveness. Being an active listener and an empathetic listener, and doing it on a one-to-one basis, or listening and paying attention to the employee feedback surveys. I still remember my mother saying, God gave me 2 ears and 1 mouth, so I should be using them proportionately. And if that's the case, we need to do a lot more listening to understand what's going on in the workplace to build that harmony and that inclusiveness. And lastly, but not least, learn to control the human tendency to say different than me instead of different like me. We're all different. We're all different. And maintaining a work environment that engages and respects and seeks to understand internationally trained professionals and their unique culture and abilities is critical. Because it's those organizations that can do that and gain the respect of individuals who are coming from other countries. They're the ones that are going to foster the support and the faith to have, not the faith, but the individual. Sorry, Grace is having Grace is having a coughing fit. The possibility to help individuals get through what they need to do to work in the workplace. I'll just finish off by saying inclusiveness. It starts with the letter I. And so really, I think one of the key things we need to do is to ask yourself, what can I, as an individual, what can I, as an organization, do to help build harmony and inclusiveness in our workplace? And that being a key question, that probably segues nice into our Q&A.
Great. Thank you, Grace and David, for sharing your thoughts with us today. So now what we want to do is just open up our webinar to some questions from you. Again, if you have a question, please make sure to enter it in the Q&A panel that's to your right and send it to all panelists. And just a reminder to everyone who's listening in today, we will be making both the PowerPoint presentation as well as the recording of today's webinar available for view on our website, www.bot.com/diversity. I will be sending out an email to all of you to provide you with the link once we have that up as well. Okay, so our first question is from Anita, and I think both David as well as Grace, both of you can speak to this a little bit. Anita wants to know, are you leveraging social media on engagement, and if so, how?
Can I take that one to begin? Okay. The answer is yes. And most recently, I'll give great credit to our executive director. She's helped drag us kicking and screaming into the 21st century, and we're very happy about that because I've never been much for Twitter. I didn't really understand most of it, and she has brought me into a higher level of knowledge and understanding. Most recently, when we had our Diversity Work Conference, we had Twitter running simultaneously with the broadcasting out to people who were actually following us with Twitter. So it's a critical element. Certainly LinkedIn is a tool that we use when it comes to bringing together like thoughts of people so that we can have teams of thought so people can contribute and certainly give access to us. So social media is something that we're much, much more in tune with now, I'd say over the past year than we ever have been. I'm not sure how that falls in your area, Grace.
With respect to engaging our workforce, I would say that we're using social media more towards engagement of our customer base as well as the end users. But absolutely for our training is how we leverage social media the most within our own staff. So we are using webinars similar to this one to include our overseas offices, to include them on both the staff meetings as well as all of our training sessions. And we are also have a presence on LinkedIn as well as Facebook.
If I could add one other thing too, we've been providing mentoring service since 1993, and one of the things that we just most recently launched is e-mentoring. So if I could put that sort of under the category of social media, in the sense that we want to find a way to make it more comfortable and accessible for both mentors across the country, in fact across the world, and our mentees to make connection with each other. And one of the ways and means of doing that is to connect them through the e-mentoring, which also aligns with Skype. So those individuals can go face-to-face, voice-to-voice, text-to-text, whatever is more comfortable for them. But I would think that's a key social media tool that we've most recently been involved into.
I'll contribute towards the Skype. We absolutely use Skype every day in almost all communications across the 7 countries that we are based out of. So it is quite easy. You can do everything from video conferencing to the text chat as well as the phone chat as well. So we do use that quite exhaustively, actually.
There used to be an expression we used to have when they were advertising long distance is the next best thing to being there. No, Skype it.
Yeah.
Or tools like Skype.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Our next question is for Grace, but I think David can also speak to this a little bit later, is that as a smaller and medium-sized company, what are some of the cost challenges that your company has come across when you are implementing these different types of training programs towards helping to integrate your diverse workforce?
The cost?
Like, are there any costs associated with some of the ESL training programs, or any cost considerations that your company, takes into consideration?
Our business is a small, medium enterprise, and cost is always a factor when we're considering anything from training to even the play as well as the welcome parties as well. So absolutely we consider the cost, but that's the challenge that our CEO puts back to us, is that it's a requirement for us to include and train and retain all of our staff members that are educated overseas, as well as any diverse workforce. So does the cost outweigh the value that it brings? And it does. So when we look for ESL or any kind of training courses, we do our best to provide that with the least cost as possible, which is why we build most of our internal training. We do it internally, and at the same time, it allows all of our staff to practice. It allows them to stretch beyond their normal jobs. So if they're typically in a customer support role, we'll challenge them by giving them a specialty, a up-and-coming product that they have to become a specialist on, and they have to leverage all of the people involved in that project, learn about it, and then they provide the training courses back to the rest of the staff. So it works out both ways, I think. We're mindful of the cost as well as mindful of the requirements to include everybody within our staff. Okay. Hopefully that answers the question.
No, that's good. I'm thinking there's two things that organizations can do. There are things that are available that are free out there in terms of English as a second language, and oftentimes if people are eligible to take those courses are usually taught off-site at a particular location, and sometimes the costs are extremely reasonable and sometimes free, but they may not necessarily be tuned to your particular company or your particular vernacular, which can be important. There are courses that we offer, and other organizations like us, which, from our perspective as a not-for-profit, is very affordable. We do not charge, and we cannot charge private sector corporate rates because we're not a private sector corporate company. Oftentimes our clients will see the cost and they'll weigh it against the benefit of higher retention, greater workplace harmony, inclusiveness, and it really depends on the positions that they're trying to support. Specifically, if they're client-facing positions, it's critical that the individuals have extremely good workplace communication skills. They know the nuances of the language. And also when it comes to succession planning, because oftentimes individuals who can be absolutely statistically brilliant in their craft or in their role, but maybe They're not able to communicate that information as effectively as somebody else might be, and that's a disadvantage to them. And it's also a disadvantage to you as an organization, because those individuals are probably folks that don't feel fully engaged, and they're the ones that you lose. And they move on to the competition, which means you spent money training them for your competition when in fact you could have spent a little less money just to retain them and to train them. So it's really it's a ratio. If your cost is outweighed by your benefit, it's a good thing.
Great. So that's all the time that we have for today. If anyone has any other additional questions, both Grace and Dave, their contact information is up on the slide for you to, send any questions to them later. So thank you very much for attending today, and have a great afternoon.
You got a cold, don't worry.
Thank you.
You did well. You did very well. Yeah.